Okay, so this is day one of our official podcast. So I'm a little nervous actually. I'm not, and I feel a little unprepared. But I think that's what's awesome about what we're doing is that you came to me last week and you said, "Hey, I want to do this thing. I'm really excited about getting into this space. I feel like I have a story and a message and something I want to tell." And so it was okay. Let's get into action. And I feel like that's kind of been the story of our lives, right? Like, always getting into action, doing it sloppy, doing it even if it's ugly, and getting in the weeds and just starting by taking action. This is what I love about what we're doing. Even on the way here, it's like, well, what are we going to talk about? And, what is going to be the theme and all that stuff. And I feel like sometimes when people want to do a project like this, that's where they get stuck. They start figuring out logos and they start figuring out websites and getting domains. And, sometimes they'll set up like LLCs and holding companies who are specifically kind of talking about real estate guys, but they'll do all those things. And then the most important thing that they need to do is take action. And that never seems to happen. So I'm just really proud of us just for being here.
Heck yeah. Well, I think people plan so much and they don't ever execute, or they want everything to be perfect. And really the only way to figure out things that don't work and that do work is to do. And today was super inconvenient for us because we have a daughter in volleyball sports and it's far, a little bit of a drive, but we did it. And so I think that has been our story, and we could have had, we just did it. We just are here and ready to do it. So
and totally did it in a not perfect way too.
Yeah.
It was last night, who's going to bring Bella to, volleyball? Like we had to change the timing around. Of course, we're all the way in LA. So the drive is like, ridiculous. And it got even more ridiculous on the way here. Just the Waze just kept telling me like, it's going to be longer. It's going to be longer. It's like, oh my gosh. But that's the whole thing is you just do it even when it's inconvenient and you just try. So I'm really excited about this.
And there's resistance. I feel like anytime you and I have set out to do big things or to do something different, there's always been resistance. So even last night, there's a little bit of resistance with my attitude and just feeling stressed and overwhelmed. And then this morning, there's always some kind of resistance. And, I think it's so cool that we just continue to, maybe we, kick and scream, may not have the best attitude, but we keep continuing to show up. And that's what we do. And that's why we're here.
Well, and the thing that I love about doing this with you is that you have such an amazing story that, we did this thing in our Bible study, in our rooted class a couple months ago or whatever. And we were telling our story, and it was really awesome to hear you tell your story. And of course we've been married for 15 years. So I've been a big part of that story, even though there was a story prior to me. And so I get to see all these really amazing qualities and these things about you that a lot of people don't get to see. And so that's what I love about you doing something like this, is that you're able to kind of showcase those things. I feel like you have such an amazing message, and even just seeing the way people will respond to you on social media and the way they ask questions, and you provide so much value to so many people. And so I love this type of content for you. And I think it's just a great platform for you to, to share your story. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's nice.
Yeah,
I love language is words of affirmation. So keep going.
Did I just score some points? Is that?
A little bit. Yeah, maybe.
Okay. So here's what I want to talk about, because there's, I know your childhood growing up and all these things, but I would love for you to share with everybody what it was like, growing up as a middle child, where you grew up, and some of the things around just your upbringing.
The short version.
Yes.
Well, grew up in a family with, there's 5 of us. I was a middle child, and I do believe that there is such a thing as middle child syndrome. We do get left out, we get overlooked, or maybe we feel like we get overlooked. But, growing up, I know that looking back and after we shared our testimony, it was the first time actually going through my lifespan of 40 years in a chronological way and looking at events that have really made an impact on my life, whether it was good or bad. There's certain moments in my life that really kind of defined who I am. And I know it's, so many people say, forget about the past and move on. But I think that if you look at the past and look at those moments, like that could have changed you. Maybe it was a hard time. It could have changed you in a good way. And I am thankful for the hard times in my life because it has formed a lot of my work ethic and just the person I am today. There's things that I've had to overcome. And I always say I've had to unlearn some things that were no longer serving me and won't serve myself as a wife, for you, serve myself as a mother. And so, so growing up just, it was a household. My parents always had the best intentions looking back at their lives. And, as, in their childhood, I look at, and hearing stories from their childhood is just the struggles they went through and a lot of generational bondages and generational habits and strongholds that were passed down to them that they didn't know how to overcome those. They didn't really have the tools. They weren't, they didn't have as much access as we have had growing up to bettering ourselves. I feel like that we've gotten extremely blessed. So we grew up, I grew up in a family that was always struggling financially. My dad was a hard worker. My mom chose to stay at home and, homeschool us. And so their intentions were always good. They wanted to raise us differently than they were raised, but they were like kids trying to raise kids. And they did what they knew. And so it was always struggling, financially. There was a lot of fighting and a lot of it due to just money, not having enough money, the stress and, raising 3 daughters is not cheap, I
know.
We have 2. And we even weren't, a lot of opportunities our girls have now, I didn't really have those back then, and it was even still hard. So just a lot of fighting, a lot of, just things that I had to see. And I just knew as I started to get older, like there had to be something different. And I wanted to be the one. I wanted to be, even at a young age, I was always attracted to things of people that had money or that had lived in happier, homes where it was more peaceful and not as much fighting. And it wasn't all bad, but the bad moments were really bad and they were hard. And I just knew that there was something I wanted to do to be different.
Yeah, I love that. And that's one of the things that you bring into the house now is a lot of that peace, even when things get loud or, right? And this is an Italian household, so it's always loud, right? Yep. And that's actually, I think, a big difference between, the way I grew up and the way you grew up is, loud was just normal. We would always argue and fight. And then the next, minute we'd be going out to dinner. It's just like part of the Italian, culture. But you do bring a lot of that peace into the house. And I always see you try to, bring it down and not up, which is challenging with, me and our youngest
Very.
as well. One of the things that, you've always talked about, one of the things that you've always talked about is just like your dad's work ethic. Of course, I have seen you go from, a mother, really just a stay-at-home mom when you were in your early 20s, right? When we first had Bella and Gianna, and then start doing, getting back into makeup and making, bringing some income in there. And then, of course, now into your coaching business. But one of the things that has always been something that's always really stood out to me is just like your work ethic. You've always just done whatever it takes, no matter what. You've always put in the work. It's like one thing that you're not afraid of. It's always been a character trait that I've admired about you. I'm definitely scoring a ton of points right now. I know, don't you love it? But I know that, I also know that being around your dad for the past 15 years, that a lot of that work ethic comes from him. I know that your mom works her tail off too. She's always working as well. But I do feel like your dad's maybe shaped a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. I mean, my dad, he you know, he was a painter. He worked with his hands, and he never sat down. It was always a thing in our household. Like, we wanted dad to relax. And it's funny because I feel like I'm that person now. Like, it's very hard for me to relax. I've gotten better at it at night, but my dad's always, you know, he's always been a hard worker. And, you know, I've worked with him. I used to work and paint houses with him. Like, I worked and I saw him in action. And the thing about my dad, not only was he a hard worker, but he was excellent in everything he did. When he would paint a home, he would show up on time. He would make sure there was no spills. He would clean up after himself. He taught me how to, you know, the way you clean a paintbrush, how there's no drips. Like, no one would have cared. That's the thing about, I think, those moments of just spending time with him and seeing that when you do what you do, how you do one thing is how you do the rest of things. Like, if you do one thing well, you're going to do well at other things. And I really learned that from my dad. And as I started to get older, I think my first job was like when I was 15 and a half. I was Bella's age. My first job was wet sale. And I was always like folding clothes. Like, when no one was watching, I was always trying to be excellent in the small things. And I'm grateful for that, because I feel like that has trickled in, even though I'm not perfect as my dad, but he helped me realize, like, you work hard, and when you work hard, you give 110% when you're working. So, and both my mom too. My mom, you know, is the creative side, always creating and always doing and wanting to be involved with things. So I think I kind of picked up on both of those too. It's like part of me, and that's kind of and then put my own little flair.
Yeah.
That's created who
and
I
then
am
you,
today.
And then you 10x'd it. Then you 10x'd it is what you did.
But yeah.
I do have a question, a little off topic, but you told me one time you got robbed somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Where was that?
Oh my
That
gosh.
wasn't at Wet Seal, was it?
No, that was So I was a manager. I always, you know, try to go to the top, and I was a manager at a beauty supply. And I remember it was a small beauty supply. I was probably like 19 or 20. And I was ready to leave to head home. I was done with my shift, but I would always go and check everything, clean up my office, and make sure like everything was dialed. And so I left my my wallet and my keys on like the top part by the cash register. And I walk in the back, and I'm looking at the cameras, and I saw a man walk in and talk to one of the cashiers standing there. And I didn't really even see anything, but apparently he had a gun, and he was aiming the gun at the girl. And she walked back, and she's like, "We just got robbed." And he stole my wallet and my keys. And
my
so that was like a whole thing.
It's so funny to think about the 19-year-old version of you, like, you know, with your office and bossing people around and probably feeling so cool.
I always wanted to be a boss. Like, that's why I think like our daughter, our youngest Gia, is like kind of like that. You know, she's so bossy. But I was always like that. I always had to be in charge. I always had offices, you know, at our house. I always would like set up offices, and I loved the sound of like high heels, you know, hitting against the floor. And I loved having paperwork. I always wanted to be that businesswoman and always wanted to be like in charge. So I think that's when I went to any job, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be in charge, you know?
Yeah.
But really it was more of I was a really good employee. Honestly, I showed up on time. I would be sick. I would never call it sick. And you know, that's how a lot of that is, if like, it's impacted how I parent the girls. I don't ever want them to like miss something. I'm like, no, you need to show up. Like, I would show up no matter what. If I was like deadly sick, you know, which I was never deadly sick, but if I was really sick, then I wouldn't go. So, yeah.
It's really funny too, because Gia's the same way. So Gianna will take over my office, and she gets on my computer. I've got 3 monitors, right? So she goes in there, and she's, you know, she'll have Zillow pulled up, you know, looking at $5 million houses that she wants to remodel. And then I'll find like a spreadsheet, like a Google spreadsheet with, you know, all the different properties. And she has like, I don't know if you know this, but she has a 3-ring binder that has like a bunch of like training schedules and all kinds of stuff in there. So I think that's definitely something that's been like passed on to Gia.
Funny, yeah.
I know, it's really stinking funny. But I wanted to just maybe change gears a little bit, because I know that, you know, just growing up, I know you were out of the house early, I think at 17, and you always, and this is just what I know, is that you were always working and doing those types of things. But like, how did that change when you became a mom? So you become a mom, you go from, all of this, work and being single and all that stuff too, because we got married so quick. We were, basically we met, we were living together within a couple months. And then, 9 months later, we had our first child. And I think how old were you? 24?
I think so.
You were 24, I was 25. So, that's a big transition. So what was that like going from, work? I always wanted to work, high heels, this New York type. I know you always say like, oh, I love New York. I love that too. It's something that we both love. But curious to know, like, what was that like? Because during that time, I was traveling a lot. I was busy working and I was gone, and you're a new mom. And so what does that look like?
Gosh, that's kind of a loaded question. I feel like for me, my dream and my goal in life, and I always felt bad about saying this, and I'm just going to say it, but my dream wasn't to become a mom and a homemaker. Like, I wanted to be a businesswoman. And I think just because, growing up the way I did and looking at how I grew up and realizing like, okay, all our fighting came from financial struggles. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to work hard to have enough money to not have to fight, because I wanted peace. So with that being said, that was my main focus. I never was like, I'm not going to just be, and I didn't want to just be reliant on a man. I wanted to have my own income. And so just kind of how I've always been. So I think how we met and our story happened so fast that I didn't even realize what was happening. And it's like, oh my gosh. And I even said, people would ask, do you want kids? And I'm like, no, I'm too selfish for kids. That was always my thing. I'm too selfish for kids. And it's like, careful saying that, because God will give you, God will give you what you need. He does. He gives. And I can't even imagine our life without the girls. I can't. They've actually shaped me and changed me as a mom, even through the difficult times. But it was hard. I remember I still worked at MAC. I remember I was working at MAC Cosmetics when I was pregnant.
Well, I remember when Bella was born, you weren't working, I think. You were working up until when she was born. And then after she was born, I think there was, I don't know how long you were off, but I do remember you
8
coming.
weeks.
Is that it? 8 weeks?
Yeah.
And then I do remember you coming to me and saying like, hey, I want to go back and I want to work. And I remember at the time I was so busy with the motorcycle business, doing all of everything that was involved there with all the, just travel and, managing the company and all that stuff. And I remember you driving to the Brea Mall working, and I remember it like costing more money in toll roads and gas than you were necessary. You would go in for sometimes a couple hours, and I think they were paying like $20 an hour or something. But I just remember it being one of those things where it made more sense because you just needed to get out of the house.
Yeah, but I remember, I don't know if you remember this, I had actually signed papers and talked to them because I had a C-section, and so you couldn't work for 8 weeks. And so I had talked to them and I was ready to go back to work. And I told you that, hey, I'm planning to start, this is my start day. And you actually said, no, you're not. Like, I want you to stay home with the girls. And then shortly after, that's when I started to freelance, because I felt like I missed that. I even missed that creativity side of doing the makeup. But, well, let me turn the roles a little bit. What was your desire for me to stay at home? Like at that time with Bella, not now. Like, were you like, no, I want her to stay at home and raise the girls? Because I've never even asked you that.
I'm not even 100% sure if it was, I don't know, actually. I think I was so preoccupied with just all of this, all of the details and the responsibility and the kind of the weight of, my business at the time. That was 2009, so it was a bad financial year, just all the things happened. My dad passed away, all of those things. I don't really know if I had time to think about anything that I wanted to do other than just get my butt to work and make money and provide. There really just wasn't any time for that. But I think I was always aware of just wanting to make sure that you were in a happy space. I was also young, right? So maybe like 27 or 26, whatever the number was. I knew that like postpartum was like a thing that happens to women. Like women, they don't feel well after they have babies. I also knew that staying home with a baby is like, can be miserable. It's hard to do. It's like, that's the weird thing I think about having kids is that, they bring so much joy, but they bring so much stress as well. And they can be, it can be really challenging. And so I don't really know if I ever thought about, how our lives were going to work because it happened so fast.
Yeah.
It just happened so stinking fast. So there wasn't really much time, but I do know that you wanted to go back to work and you were, serious about that. And I wanted to support it. And so I was like, okay, so let's do it. So that was probably where I was at that time.
Yeah, and it was part-time. It wasn't full. I still was home with the girls. But I think with Bella, I didn't realize it until like later on that I probably did have a little bit of postpartum. And even I think there's, I don't think it was to the degree of some people, but it was just I felt very lonely and depressed and like, I know for sure it was a little bit of the baby blues, and I get like, because your hormones change and whatnot. And so it was hard. It was hard going from working, getting dressed up, and then being at home with a crying baby. And Bella was colicky. Bella didn't sleep. She cried a lot. We were new parents. We were, even nursing was hard. You would get mad about that. You're like, just give her a bottle. And I was like, no, I have to nurse her. And I stuck with it.
Oh my gosh, that was one of the most, for a dude, like one of the most frustrating things is like to hear your wife downstairs at like 3:00 in the morning or 4:00 in the morning trying to breastfeed. You were crying, the baby's crying, all of the lights are on, nobody's sleeping. Like that is, that's the thing that you can never prepare a new parent for. Like, like we thought like, oh, we're going to be great parents. We'll be really good with the babies. We'll know how to do this. We read the book, remember that big thick book that was rolling around forever. The first year.
Took the classes. We took the
classes, all of those things. But then reality really kicks you in the butt on, day one. You show up from the hospital. You've now got this baby and this thing and there's nobody around. And it's like, okay, I'm now responsible for this, this human life. And I'm not even responsible enough for my life. And so how am I going to take care of this person? That's like, for me, like the day reality really kicked in. I think it was like the first night when we were living in Aliso Viejo at the apartment where I'm like, and I always tell the story. I just remember running around the house at like 3:00 in the morning. I like can clear as day. Remember we had that little island and, I just remember you were upstairs sleeping. I had Bella. I don't know what time it was, but it was like, it was somewhere between 2 and 4:00 in the morning. And I remember walking Bella around, doing laps around the island, trying to get her to stop. I'm wearing no clothes. I'm only wearing my boxers and, I'm sweating and Bella won't stop. So I'm like trying everything I possibly, and this is, what is this, 2008, 2009? So it's not like there wasn't as many resources as there is today. So like, we probably could have, like, I don't even think YouTube was like that big of a deal, or like there wasn't a lot of resources. So you would just kind of like, well, I heard if you hold the baby this way or hold it like a football or, whatever, and then with Bella, for whatever reason, the second you'd sit down with this kid, she would start crying. And so you literally would just have to stand with her forever. And, man, that was just absolutely brutal times. Like I have PTSD from like the first 8 weeks of Bella being around. Gia was better when Gia was born because you told me, you're like, look, I'm going to take Gia, you take Bella, and we're going to divide and conquer on this deal. And I don't even know, like for the first like 12 months of Gia's life, I don't even know what the heck you guys were like. I don't know if she slept well. I don't know if she didn't sleep well. I have no idea because I would just take Bella and get her ready for bed and we would be like off on our own side of the house.
Yeah. I'm like, we're not going to be as chaotic as we were with our first child. And that was a really hard time. I mean, we were married, with it was 2 years at that time, and had a newborn.
And technically we had only really known each other for 2.5 years.
I know, it's wild to me. It's like, it was so much so quickly, and it was just a lot, But
I would love
here
to
we
know
are.
what you would, well, yeah. And I would love to know what you would say to that person. Like if you could go back to 25-year-old, version of Chelsea in those moments with the babies being so young, like what would be, and not even business stuff, just
Yeah.
like what would you say to that person? I would imagine there were some difficult times. I know that, breastfeeding was like a whole thing for a while, and that was like a whole thing. But
Yeah.
like, what would you say to that person to give to that version of you to give yourself some encouragement?
That the season doesn't last. And when you're that young and you're kind of naive, you think that this is your life forever, that you're going to have this screamy baby that always needs you, that you can't even take a shower. I remember taking a shower and I'd have one leg out bouncing the
The whole thing.
bouncer.
Yep.
So she would, because she liked motion. So she would just be a little bit calm, but that the season doesn't last. And I would get so frustrated. And you were traveling as well. So I was alone a lot. It was me and Bella alone a lot. And you have this, it was hard. You have this baby that's crying and needing you. And you feel disconnected from the world because as a young mom, a lot of my friends were still out partying. We're still out, they didn't have kids. We actually had kids, I think, earlier than most people. And so what I would tell that person is, one, I wish I would have joined like a MOPS or a community of other women. I was so against that. I didn't want to be like put in the mom category. I'm like, I refused to like wear maternity clothes. It was so odd, but I just didn't want to, I don't know why. I didn't want to join those kinds of group, but I think it's in community is important. So you don't feel like you're going crazy, because I think sometimes as a young mom, we're like, you are so focused on just you. And then all of a sudden you have a kid and now it's like your husband and you and a household and chores and bills and just like one thing at a time, and I think community is really, really important, but to embrace them needing you and wanting you, because at some point they won't hug you anymore, rarely. So.
And I remember, like, when I think about the girls being young, especially around like when we were in the Aliso apartment, but even when we moved out to Corona and you were out there, I remember all the time you walking with girls. Like,
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
I have like a vivid just memory of you walking with Bella in the stroller, in your heels, and you were just like, or your platforms or whatever, I don't know, whatever. And I remember that was just like your thing. And you were just like, and I know you get a lot of stuff for that. Like people have like said stuff to you in the past, like, oh, you're wearing platforms, or what is it? What is it that people have said to you about that?
Well, I would get like snarky comments from like the mom, and a lot of the moms I would see or associate with would be more like of that homely looking mom, and I didn't want to be that person, and I felt like maybe I should be. Do I need to be? I started to question that, but I am a huge advocate of, especially me going from doing makeup, being a makeup artist, getting ready. Our motto at MAC was get ready like you're going to a party. You want to dress up. And I loved that. I love getting ready and feeling good. And so when I quit MAC and now I'm at home, I still wanted to get ready to feel good about myself. And I feel like if you get ready for the day, it doesn't have to be full-blown glam makeup. That was just my preference. But you are going to show up better. You're going to feel good. And you're able to give your, all of you to your kids. And so, so I would still wear my platforms. I would wear wedges around the block. I would walk all the time with Bella, and it helped her calm down. It helped me. I think it really helped my mental state. Now I look back at it, but I would have these like snarky comments from moms. I remember, and now I would probably just wear tennis shoes, but it did help my legs. It helped tone my legs, and I lost a lot of weight fast. But I remember moms would be like, oh, well, what, hope you don't fall in those shoes, or just say stuff like that. And I'm like, I actually could run in them. I would just I would always get comments, and I think it's because it's out of the norm. Most moms don't wear that, and that's okay. But that's what made me feel good, and that's why I'm a huge advocate of like, if no one else is wearing makeup, if no one else is wearing these wedges, but it makes you feel good, then you do that.
It's interesting you say that, because I feel like it's on us to make ourselves feel good. Like it's 100% on you, right? So if for you feeling good means, putting your platforms on and pushing the baby around, like that's what it takes. For me, maybe it's going to the gym or, going on a run or going golfing or, sitting and doing nothing, whatever that looks like. But it's definitely like on us to be aware, especially like, especially if we're not feeling good. Like, so, sometimes for me, like I'll wake up and I'll just be in in a bad mood. Ever have that happen?
No, never. I'm always in a good mood.
Only every morning before coffee.
Yeah, like, don't talk
I'm the
to
morning
me.
person. You're not the morning person.
Don't talk to me before coffee.
But I think sometimes when we get into like these when we start to not feel good, what I have learned to do just as I've gotten older is acknowledge that I'm in that space. So I have to like tell myself, well, I have to tell myself I don't feel good today. And a lot of times that comes from focusing on the wrong things. So I'll give myself time to sit in that and say, okay, these are the things that are bothering me, that are going wrong, that are making me not feel well. But those are, generally speaking, in the past, or they're things in the future that I can either take action on now that will help my future. It's like a lot of that that feeling of the anxiety and all these things comes from not taking action and not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. So for me, when I'm not feeling good, I do the same thing. I acknowledge, and then I immediately get into activity, get into action, and I get into gratitude. Start thinking about all the things that have gone right. And it's weird. This is one of the big challenges, and I know this is kind of changing gears a little bit, but for me, this is one of the big challenges as an entrepreneur. When you own your own business and you're responsible for sales and you're responsible for people and you're managing people and all these things, it's really easy to focus on all the bad things. Mm-hmm. It's like you can have one order cancel and you feel like garbage, even if you've had 3 people place orders. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think this is one of the things that, one of the big challenges that I think a lot of entrepreneurs face. Maybe not, maybe it's just me. But for me, I always have to get into a gratitude state and then change my physical state. So I think that's awesome that even when you were young and you didn't really know any better because you didn't have any like really resources. It's not like you were reading books. There were no podcasts. You just said, hey, this makes me feel better. So I'm going to get into this space and I'm going to start doing these things, And
to your point though, I heard someone speak on that, how, kind of it stems back to like our ancestors. But how, we, people back in the day would hunt for food. And when you go hunting and picking out your food, you have to protect from the outside, from predators. Yeah. So you're already on that defense. You're in defense mode. You're ready to put that wall up and to protect yourself. And so naturally, I think that, and especially as parents, we're warriors. I know for me as a mom, there's so much. Sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, like this is so overwhelming. It's like the girls' homework, do they get turned in? Did I pay their volleyball tuition? Did I sign them up before it was too late? Have I checked in with, my team? Have I checked in with that? It's all of these things that automatically go. And something our pastor said Sunday, which was like, I needed to hear that. Like I always, we always say that. I needed to hear that moment. But he's like, all worry is like this. This is worry.
No, it's funny when he did that.
You're just worried and it's all right here. And he goes, if you know how to worry, then you know how to pray. So if you're worrying, what prayer looks like is you release it. And I don't know why, just like that visual, I was like, oh, yeah. Like all worry is doing is nothing. It's just like clogging your brain and it's affecting you. So I think you and you're better at that than I. I go through seasons where and you even remind me like, hey, if I don't start my day off with gratitude, what I'm grateful for, automatically I'm in I got to do this. And it's like, it's stressful and the whole home becomes stressful. So I think taking that moment and like I said, you're way better at than I am. I need to be consistently better at this is just starting my day off with God, you're in control. I'm going to tackle the 5 top things today. And that's it. If I forget something, I forget something. I'm still breathing. I've forgotten something. I have. But.
Well, so the other thing I wanted to talk about real quick was just, we went through a period of time where we had the girls and, I was doing the motorcycle thing and developing that business and all that good stuff. And right around 2015, things started to get a little bit rocky. My business started to get a little bit sideways. That was a really difficult time for both of us. Just for me as a father, as a provider, it's always, when you can't provide for your family, this is always like the worst feeling for any man ever. But it was a lot of that was really for the good, brought us to kind of a new level, which is kind of the interesting thing is that when we were in it, we didn't realize that we were being shaped or, we were learning things that were going to help us bring us to it. Because the reality is we were stuck in the same spot for a really long time. And without going through kind of all those things, looking for different opportunities, then we'd still be there. That's what I love about what we're doing today. It's like, we're just like, hey, we're going to go do this thing. We're going to figure it out. We're going to see how it turns out. And we're just going to go. We're just going to try. Because I think that's where people get stuck. Yeah. They don't ever try. And so because people aren't trying, they're stuck in this perpetual loop. It's like you get up and do the same thing every day, you're going to get the same results. And so 2015, I think really between 15 and 17 was tough. I know during that time you were doing a lot of freelance stuff, which was awesome because you'd always come home with a bag of cash. You'd be doing weddings and come back. But that was also hard too, as a husband, watching you leave on the weekends and being gone all day. And of course, some of those weddings, I think you really enjoyed yourself, but I think some of them probably weren't really that awesome. I know that you have some really lousy stories that go along with that, but it served a time and it served a purpose. Do you ever miss doing those things?
I miss, what was reward. Yeah. I mean, I do. I don't miss doing weddings, but I miss some parts of it. I enjoyed, I loved being able to I love seeing people, doing their makeup and them just feeling great and like, oh my gosh, thanking me. And I did enjoy the conversations. I love creating. I like when I'm, putting makeup on someone's face, I just get kind of lost. Like people are like, aren't you tired? And I wouldn't get tired till after I came home, like an hour later, but because I would have so much adrenaline. But the exhausting part, the tiring part is, when people started getting picky and, when people are picky, you lose that creative side and that gets really annoying, or when you're like in the middle of makeup, they're like, is he going to look like this? Like, no, I'm not going to leave black on your cheek. But, no, that was hard. And the hardest part was leaving the girls. And that's, I think, when I knew I had to make a shift is like, I would start to miss birthday parties. And I'll never forget this story because this still brings tears in my eyes. I'm going to try not to cry, but it was when Bella had a dance recital. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to make it. And it was like her hip hop duet. Remember, it was her and another girl, and she was so good at hip hop. And I was like, okay, I have this wedding, and the thing is, you can't cancel. Brides, I get booked out sometimes a year in advance, and like this is their big special day. There's a contract sign, and so in order, I can't. They picked you for your artist, your skills. And so you can't just like find someone randomly because they trust you and you build this relationship. So Bella had this dance and we didn't find out till like later. And I remember in my head thinking, I'm going to do makeup really fast. And I don't go fast. I take a long time. And I taught you the night before. I showed you how to do it. And long story short, I missed the recital. And I remember that was the hardest wedding because my head wasn't there. I was just thinking of how quick I can get done to go make it to my daughter's dance recital. And they were being hard and difficult and picky. And I was just like, I don't want to be here. And I think that was one instance where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't, the income was great and I love doing what I do, but I love, spending time with my kids especially on these days that are huge milestones for them. And that was really, really hard. So I remember that's when I had to really, do something different or find something different. I remember the question.
Yeah, no. And it's funny because I remember, it must have been around that time, but I remember you were like, I need to find like some products that I can sell.
Yeah.
Like I need to find some products that I can sell from home so I can be present. And we were talking about this in the car on the way here. It's, I think when a woman is, you had asked me earlier, like, did you want me to stay at home? Did you not want me, and I didn't even have an answer because I don't really even know what I was even thinking. First thing I was just immature. I just didn't know anything. And I was certainly financially immature at the time. But now I think one of the things that, and we talked about this in the car a little bit, is I think one of the things, like if I were to give advice to any women, and I'm not qualified to do that, or men or whatever, to young couples, is have your wife be in some sort of direct sales. And there's so much taboo around direct sales and pyramids, and there are some really lousy companies, but there's also some really amazing companies. And the one thing that I love about the direct sales business is most of the time you can do this type of business from your kitchen with a cell phone. And what I didn't really, and I don't know if a lot of people, maybe women, realize this, or husbands. I know a lot of husbands don't realize this, because if they did, they'd be way more supportive of their wives getting in direct sales. When a woman starts doing some sort of activity to bring money to the table, I actually see most men get really upset about it. It's the weirdest thing ever to me. We've seen that a lot in the direct sales business. Husbands who don't support their wives. It's the strangest thing ever to me, but I do think it comes from where their head's at, right? Mm-hmm. They're not thinking of their family as a unit, and them and their wife as a team. Of course, we're believers, so we think that God brings us together to provide for our family. So these opportunities come to us for a reason, mm-hmm. to provide a better life for our children. But I do think that the advice that I would give to anybody who's younger, in their 20s or their 30s, is be involved in some sort of direct sales business where it's not, building teams for other people. It's building a team for you, where mm-hmm. you can build a team and you can go direct to consumer, and you can have, you can support your clients. This is not free money. It's never passive money, but you can support clients, and you can sell something in a way to where you can bring that additional income, and watch how an additional $1,000 a month changes your life. I mean, that's not even a lot of money. And in a lot of business, I think that's easy to do. But that has a significant impact, and we've certainly seen that inside of our organization. We've seen that have even small money like that. I was talking to one of the coaches who hasn't even been in the business for a couple of years, doing absolutely nothing, and she makes about $1,000 a month. And her husband was messaging me on Facebook and saying, "Hey, we're so grateful for this money that comes in every month, and these people don't even do anything." Which is almost kind of a little bit annoying, because it's like, hey, dude, like, you got to support people. You can't just get paid. But that would be the thing that I would suggest to a lot of younger couples, is have your wife start doing something that they can do part-time, just helping to provide some income, taking a little bit of weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, and really, Jay, I'm so grateful for you always supporting me doing that, because we've seen, and I think I just am so used to you always supporting me. When I had an idea, if I wanted to do makeup, if I wanted to go back to work, you've always supported that. You've always supported what I wanted to do. And like, you've never, you've allowed me to follow my dreams, where I think sometimes men don't. And some of it's could be because of a lack of insecurity. Men are, and there's different, I don't want to like just pinpoint one thing, but sometimes men get insecure, and especially in the business when women start to make a lot of income, and I think that there's always, it's goes both ways, and that's a whole nother topic, but you've always supported me. And I think it's super important. It's something that I tell the girls now. I'm like, I think it's super important to find a side hustle, to have something. And if I was to give a piece of advice to that 20-year-old version of me, is like, start a side hustle now. Start something that you can make, even if it's just products on the side, selling something. And I truly believe this was like given to us by God. And so you mentioned like how there's pyramid schemes and there's scams out there, for sure. There's probably stuff out there, but I know that anything that's given to us from God is only going to be for the good and only going to be for the better. And this absolutely 100% was God given, because it's shaped and formed us in so many ways, not just financially. It's shaped and helped our character, how we are. I just talked about this last night on a training. It's like, the company we've been a part of has helped us be better humans. How to put the cart back at small things like that. How you do one thing is how you do, other things. And so anyways, I can go on about that.
Yeah. And it's true. And I think with a lot of the companies, you're going to get some sort of training on, I mean, how to be a better person, but, just personal development.
Yeah.
And this is really the thing is like, I always say, like, the difference between the people who do really well whether that's financially or successfully, however you define that in life, these are the only difference between people who don't do well and who do well. And in whatever way you want to define that is really, there's just a knowledge gap.
Yeah.
So it's literally the difference of what's between your ears. Some people, they stay in this, in their circle. They stay just in this deal where it's just round and round. They only know how to solve problems in one way. I always do this kind of silly analogy where, everything that you know is sitting inside of a box that surrounds you. This is all the knowledge that you have, how to solve problems, how you behave when something happens, how you deal with your finances, like literally everything. And that box is only limited to what you've brought inside yourself and you've retained. And this is where the personal development and reading books really comes into play, because when you can listen to podcasts and you can read books on very specific topics, what ends up happening is that box just ends up getting bigger. And so then when the problem comes to you, you're able to fix it, not from your experience, but from somebody else's experience. And that this is the only separator. Well, I would say that and taking action from somebody who's winning and somebody who's not winning. And all of that I've learned from reading books and being a part of the organization where we just get so much training. And then of course I've just, for me, I'm an overachiever. I just want to take it to the next level, but definitely grateful for all of, all the things that we've learned, in the process.
But you are also innovative. So we've been given, we always say it's a personal development program with a product that we sell. But you have been, I think, with your experience too, I know you want to ask me questions, but you've had a lot of experience. You've built businesses, you've run a business, you've traveled, you've trained a team, you have hired and fired, and you've recruited. You have done so much. So a lot of the wisdom and the knowledge I've received has come from you, and anytime I am like stuck or I don't know, you always throw something, and first I'm always resistant. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. But then it takes me a while and I'm like, actually, I should do that. It's something different. Even doing this was your idea. Anytime you've always offered a suggestion to do something different, it's always been the best. It's always like, oh my gosh, that's the change I needed. And so I think we make a good team because of that.
Well, it's funny because I think, I know I've said this, but you have to try different things.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of that story, and I don't remember how it goes, about how like there's a guy who's leading a band, or he's a marching band, and he's like, hey, I need someone to play the trumpet. I need someone to play the trumpet. And the guy's like, okay, I'll play the trumpet. And so he goes, and the band's marching, and the guy's playing the trumpet, or however the trumpet is played, and he sucks. He's like absolutely terrible. And the conductor, the leader, comes back to him and says, like, hey man, I thought you said, you could play the trumpet. And he says, well, I've never tried it before, so how would I know if I knew how to do it? Mm. And it's like kind of a corny, cheesy story, but I think the reality is that you have to always be trying different things.
Yeah.
And success is never a straight line. Even for me, I always tell about, the most success I've ever financially seen is getting into real estate, getting into mortgage, hands down, period. And I didn't get into that by just going into real estate, right? I got into that actually as a photographer. I went into the business doing photography, taking pictures of little kids at a park, and that turned into doing marketing and branding for companies. I did marketing and branding for, and I'm not like a lot, but I was doing marketing and branding, remember, for a grocery store. I did it for like a couple other small companies. I was helping people like import stuff. I was doing brand and business consulting, and then I ended up at a mortgage company who needed marketing and branding help. Mm-hmm. And then that turned into me being a loan officer, turned into me being the vice president of the company, turned into me owning my own mortgage company. So like, that's the thing. It's like everybody thinks, and this is why husbands, I think, get hung up when their wives start things, and not just husbands, even wives too. Because wives will say, and you've never said this, but I know that women will say to husbands like, well, you start a bunch of things and you don't finish them. Well, a lot of times people will start things and that's not the path. They start this way, right? So we always learn, success is not a straight line. It's, it's up and down and it's sideways and it's around and round. Well, these are all things that you've learned and that you've done and mistakes that you've made, but it's your job to just like keep progressing forward and finding where it leads. And I always say, like, just let it happen. Keep your eyes open and keep trying new things, and things will come. But you got to stay consistent, moving in a certain direction. Certainly, you have to have, like I want to say tunnel vision on where you're going, but that's never a straight line.
Yeah.
And so that's why husbands in your business and in the direct sales business will come in and they'll doubt the wives. Oh, she tried this jeans company. She used to sell this oil, or she used to sell, whatever, all these different things. But it's like, well, what if this one is the one? What if this is the one that is not like those ones, right? But you don't know because you're so jaded by all this other stuff. So now guess what? Because you didn't do, you're stuck. Because you didn't try, you're stuck in this space. And so for me, anytime you've ever, come to me in frustration about any business, whether that was makeup or the direct sales business or all, we've done other things too. It's always like, okay, what do we do to create momentum? What do we do to change things? What do we do to send the trajectory in a different way? And that's why we're sitting here today. We're doing this today in order to change some sort of trajectory and bring us to the next phase, because I believe that that's where we're going, right? Like this is where we're headed. But we need to create this momentum. We need to create the movement, and we need to do things to get there. So,
but also we're not afraid of failure. We're not afraid to fail. And I think that is what I have learned from you. Growing up, I was able to watch, my dad and my mom work and their work ethic. And then now I get to see you, how you're not afraid to fail. And I think people are really afraid to fail. They get really, really hard on themselves. They're afraid of rejection. They're afraid of looking stupid, of that failure. But that's the only way you're going to learn. You're going to find out what works for you. And that's kind of what has led us here, because you've tried all these different things. But I think the beauty of failing at something and trying something is that now you have some kind of new skill set that now you can put in your toolbox. So maybe it wasn't photography for you. Maybe it wasn't being a makeup artist and building a team or being an LA makeup artist. But now I get to incorporate those skill sets, whatever it may be, bless someone or do my own makeup or my kids' makeup, who knows? But and interacting with people, showing up on time, how I lead a team now, all of this. The businesses we've been a part of have shaped and formed us who we are today. So you can't be scared. You can't be afraid of failure.
Yeah. Is that what you would tell your younger self? We talked about talking about maybe 3 things that, advice that we would give our younger selves. But I guess if you could just give, your 30-year-olds, how old were you when you started in the direct sales business?
I was 35. Yeah.
Okay. What would you give? This is a good one.
A couple years ago.
I'm really looking forward to this answer. What advice would you give to yourself on day one of that business?
On day one of that business, I would say the advice I would give is like, you only have, when you start something new, you only have a limited of time to create momentum. When you start anything new, there's excitement, there's new energy, there's people are, watching what you're doing. And one thing I didn't have to learn, because I think I was okay at, was being consistent, and I went head first. I mean, if the advice I give to anyone starting something is go all in. Go all in. You have to believe in yourself. I think that's what I did well. I believed I could do it. I said to you, I can do this. But I wish a little bit I would have pushed that much harder. I wish I would push that much harder. I wish I would have just gone a little bit more, 10x. And I already felt like I was running really hard, but just to know that there's only a limited of time. So don't take your foot off the gas. Energy, excitement is super important for other people. And that's what will really build your business, and just learn everything you can.
Yeah, and it's definitely, energy and excitement is definitely contagious.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And, you're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days, especially in being an entrepreneur. One day you're like, I got this. It's great. The next day you're like, I suck. This is awful. People, it's a roller coaster, but it's about the long game. It's about the long game, and, enjoy the journey, embrace it, take notes. Every training people you listen to. I recently said, go find a mentor that you look up to, someone who's successful, invite them out to coffee. And I wish I would have done that and recorded conversations, because you're not going to remember everything, or write it down and find out what other people are doing and then start executing and doing exactly what they're doing with your flair.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that the advice that I would give myself probably at any time in my life would be the same. Actually, probably the most important is find somebody who's done what you're trying to do and model that.
Yeah.
And get as close as you can to them. Ask a lot of questions. Be as humble as you possibly can. Ego has no room really at the bottom. So just starting at the bottom, saying, I'm going to listen to everything and not pretend like I know everything. And that's really hard. I mean, that's hard for men to do. It's hard for probably women to do as well. But that's a difficult task. But if you can be humble and you can absorb and you can get with a good team, if you can get with somebody who knows what they're doing and mentor them and model them, that is for sure the roadmap to success. So
let go your ego and be okay with being a learner and a beginner.
Lego the EO. Well, Mama, this has been really a lot of fun. Our time's up. So I want to tell you I'm very proud of you, and this is really stinking cool. I love the palm tree vibe in the back, and thank you for allowing me to be your first guest. This is so stinking fun.
Thanks for interviewing me.
Yeah, I love you. And if you've enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and we love comments. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. God bless.